Donald Trump and officials in Tehran have declared an immediate end to the war, with the U.S. president saying oil will flow on both ends again for the region and the world. But despite the breakthrough announcement, major questions remain unanswered, as the final memorandum of understanding has not been made public, and key details on the Strait of Hormuz, Iran's nuclear program, and Lebanon remain unclear. Trump has also warned that U.S. military strikes could resume if Tehran fails to reach a broader nuclear agreement in the next round of negotiations, set to begin on June 19th. Here's what we know so far. Trump appeared unequivocal about the status of the Strait of Hormuz. In a social media post, Trump declared, "I hereby fully authorize the toll-free opening of the Strait of Hormuz and, simultaneously herewith, authorize the immediate removal of the United States naval blockade. Ships of the world, start your engines. Let the oil flow." An hour later, the U.S. president said the opening of the key waterway was contingent upon the signing of a deal, scheduled for June 19th, and would be for purposes of mine removal. Crucially, the Prime Minister of mediator Pakistan made no mention of the strait in his opening announcement. Iran's Mehr State News reported that the agreed memorandum of understanding calls for the reopening of the strait within 30 days under Iranian arrangements. The U.S. has long been adamant that any tolling arrangements on shipping, such as those reportedly discussed with Oman, would be unacceptable. The U.S. president said last month, "The strait is going to be open to everybody. Nobody's going to control it." The leaders of the E4 grouping of the UK, France, Germany, and Italy were also quick to emphasize that the reopening of the strait must be unconditional and with unrestricted freedom of navigation. Regardless of the uncertainty, global oil prices tumbled in the hours following the news, with prices falling to their lowest levels since early March, shortly after the Iran war began. Prices plunged despite warnings that it could take months or years to restore the Gulf's energy production. Reopening oil and gas sites is a complex process, and some of the region's infrastructure has been damaged by drone attacks. There is also the question of whether shipping companies and insurers will feel the strait is safe enough for passage. A key point of disagreement during early ceasefire talks was whether Lebanon would be included in any deal. Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Kazem Garibabadi said the agreement establishes a permanent and immediate end to the war across all fronts, including Lebanon. Pakistan Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif was clear too, saying in a social media post, "Both sides have declared the immediate and permanent termination of military operations on all fronts, including in Lebanon." Trump made no mention of Lebanon in his initial announcements on the interim deal, focusing almost exclusively on the Strait of Hormuz. Israel, which has not been included in the Iran peace negotiations, said it will continue to occupy so-called security zones in not only Lebanon, but Syria and Gaza as well. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arguably has his own domestic political reasons to continue pursuing the conflict with Iran and its allies, including Hezbollah in Lebanon. Further military action could conceivably torpedo any agreement between the U.S. and Iran. Earlier plans to unveil a deal with Iran on June 14th were upset by an Israeli attack on Beirut, which destroyed a building in the Lebanese capital's southern suburbs, killing 3 and injuring 6. Trump told the Axios news site that the strike had delayed the signing by a few hours. Trump and Netanyahu have repeatedly clashed over Israel's military operations in Lebanon, which continued as part of a separate and frequently ignored ceasefire deal. 2 weeks ago, Trump reportedly called Netanyahu effing crazy after launching a strike on Beirut, adding, "You'd be in prison if it weren't for me." After the latest strike the weekend, he said Netanyahu had no effing judgment. The fate of the Iran's nuclear program, a key rationale given by Trump for the war on Iran, also seems to have been left unresolved in the interim agreement. Trump repeated his promise that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, but Iranian and Pakistani officials said that nuclear talks would continue over the next 60 days. Trump himself told the New York Times that if Tehran failed to reach a nuclear deal, it could come under fresh attack by the U.S. military. In a joint statement, the E4 grouping echoed Trump's comments, adding, "We are prepared to lift relevant sanctions in response to clear, verifiable steps by Iran on its nuclear program." Iran has long maintained its nuclear program is peaceful and has not publicly committed to giving up the enriched uranium, which is believed to be buried under 3 nuclear sites that were badly damaged by U.S. strikes last year. Trump faces significant political pressure to secure a better deal on this issue than the one he scuppered during his first term. He withdrew the U.S. from a 2015 multilateral Iran deal negotiated by Barack Obama that lifted sanctions on Tehran in exchange for limits on its nuclear program, including international inspections. Iran responded by ramping up its enrichment of uranium, producing more than 400 kilograms of material at close to bomb-grade purity. The eventual fate of that uranium is likely to be a key negotiating point during the upcoming broader talks. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham said on June 14th he would be watching closely the coming nuclear negotiations. Iran's Mehr news agency reported that the U.S. would release $12 billion in frozen assets to Iran before the start of negotiations. It quoted a 14-point memorandum of understanding between the two nations, which it said stipulated the release of $24 billion in frozen Iranian assets during the 60-day negotiation period that begins after the MOU is signed. However, the Trump administration didn't immediately comment on those details. Earlier, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance had said reports about a potential deal contained a lot of fake information, insisting Tehran would receive no cash simply for signing an agreement or attending talks. In a post on X, Vance had said no Iranian funds were being released up front, and that any economic benefits would depend on the Islamic Republic meeting its obligations under the deal. It remains unclear whether the negotiations will address Iran's missile program or its support for groups known collectively as the Axis of Resistance, opposed to Israel. Both issues have long been central concerns for Israel. In its report, Mehr had said that Iran's missile program and support for resistance groups have been definitively removed from the agenda.